We are going to switch topics now and talk about international WILPF. Beatriz and I both serve on the international board. And I know that I myself, and over the course of the 3 years that I've been an alternate on the board, I've learned a lot about how the sort of the mechanics of international WILPF, how it functions. And I am pretty sure that not a lot of US WILPF members have that kind of awareness. So we thought we'd start by providing background and talking about the Constitution, and then move on to some really current developments. So Beatriz is going to start us off.
Okay, so here we go again. As you probably certain things you will know already, but I will still say it in case. The Women International League for Peace and Freedom came into being in 1919 at the end of World War I in The Hague, and was then moved to Geneva, Switzerland, to be near the League of Nations, which is today the United Nations. The next few slides, I will come directly from the wording in the Constitution. WILPF is an international non-profit organization based and registered in Geneva, Switzerland, and is governed by the Constitution and the Article 60 and sequence. Oh, something comes in front of my, okay. And the sequent articles of the Swiss Civil Code. According to the Constitution, that is slide 4, according to the Constitution, the organs of WILPF shall be the International Congress, the International Board, the national sections, and the International Secretariat, in that order. Slide 5. The International Congress shall be the highest decision-making body of WILPF and the final authority in all matters. The International Congress shall be composed by all members of the International Board and delegates and alternates elected by the national sections. Slide 6. The International Board is responsible for WILPF achieving its aims and principles. It shall ensure that the decisions adopted by the International Congress to further the aims and principles of WILPF are implemented, and that the organization meets its legal and financial obligation as a constituted body. Slide 7. According to the bylaws, the IB also appoints the Secretary General, approves members of the Standing Committee, appoints representatives to the UN bodies, among others. Now, concerning national sections, the work of national sections and members is based on the aims and principles of WILPF, as established by the Constitution, and on the policies and programs established in resolution and decisions adopted by the International Congress and the International Board. Then comes the International Secretariat that comprises the Secretary General, Program Managers, staff, interns, and as required advisors and or consultants, all of whom operate under the WILPF Constitution and bylaws. And under the direction of the Secretary General, the Secretariat's role includes the implementation and reporting on policies, resolutions, and programs as adopted by the International Congress, managing financial operations, recommending and developing new initiatives in response to emergency and or emerging issues, of primary concern for WILPF and the provisions of administrative support to the International Congress and International Board. Here we come to the slide. I think if it's slide 10, where we are indicating here how you can get hold of the entire text of the Constitution and the bylaws. It's a little bit tricky to find it. First of all, you need to visit My WILPF. And if you are not yet signed in for an account, that needs to be done. Once you are within the My WILPF page, then you go to This is WILPF. And under This is WILPF is the essentials. And under essentials, we will find the Constitution and bylaws as adopted in August 2018. Now, I would like to go into some comments about the importance of national sections. That is slide 11. Although the International Board is mentioned after Congress and before the national sections, it is important to mention that the delegates of national sections may have an even more important role than the IB because they are entitled to decide who will represent them in the IB. It is crucial that the national sections exercise the right and take ownership of the future of WILPF in general. A lot of work needs to be done between now and the Congress. That will take place in less than a year. For example, now is the moment to propose amendments to the Constitution. Since I am a member of the Standing Constitution Committee, we just realized that the deadlines will be very tight. The IB has not yet approved the proposed timeline, but what I can say is that amendments to the current Constitution must be sent to the SCC, to the Standing Committee, 6 months before Congress takes place. The date now is set for July 16 and 17. So that means that the deadline for sending in amendments would be mid-January. Knowing how activities and people move in December and January, many of us are very busy with other activities. I would strongly suggest that the moment to propose amendments is between now and December. The sooner the better. The sections are also called to review the current international program. For this particular process, the Secretariat secured the grant from Peace Nexus, that is a small Swiss foundation, to hire 2 consultants from South Africa. These consultants aim at driving us through a participatory process to review the international program and organizational development. The results will need to be adopted by the IB. We call on you and other sections to take this opportunity and not hesitate to propose new ideas or amendments. Another issue very important that is coming up is the nomination of new IB members. Also, the moment has come to start reflecting on possible nominees for the next IB. This particular point is critical because the sections have the right to present their own choice. No one else should have the right to nominate the candidate without that the section of the proposed candidate is duly informed and consulted. Slide 12. Here I will talk a little bit about the role of the regional representatives and alternates. At the beginning, it was very difficult for us to function. While we knew how to go about working with the sections, there was no clarity between our role and the role of the secretariat. So we had sort of a period of interferences. Fortunately, with Janet, we developed a solid and good and pleasant working relationship. We organized regional meetings and where we counted with the valuable presence of Darian. It is my hope that we will be able to have a few more upcoming meetings, regional, to work among others on issues related to the next WILPF Congress. It is also my wish that we can, in the future, have more interaction with the US section, which is a huge section with a lot of subsections, to find ways to uphold and share about the fantastic work you are all doing. This kind of work, and I heard some things during the moments I was able to join the Congress, which really the world should know. In addition to the regional work, Janet and I ended up working with another IB colleague an enormous amount of hours on other issues on behalf of the IB, such as the communication strategy and the UN office. We also established a relationship with the other regional representatives. At this point, the slideshow is finished, and we will continue to do some talking about details, and I will give over to Janet for that.
Thanks, Beatriz. I think it was really important that you laid out what the Constitution provides, and you described WILPF governance, because I think not too many people understand it. You also emphasized that WILPF was designed to be a bottom-up organization. And Beatriz and I are urging you to get involved in the design of WILPF International's planning for the upcoming Congress and for the content of its work, that is, its 3-year program. I'm going to talk a bit more about the roles of the Secretariat, its funding, our national sections, and mention the broad outlines of WILPF's current program. I'll talk about what the IB does and point to some issues to think about. Okay, so the Secretariat, what does it do? We saw the list from the Constitution that Beatriz presented us. So staff write and administer grants, lobby the UN, and carry out projects. Now, WILPF International has grown enormously in the last few years. There was a time when what WILPF consisted of in Geneva was a director and a part-time office worker. Now, WILPF has a yearly budget of between 6 and 7 million Swiss francs, and Swiss francs are worth more than dollars. You have to add about 10% to get the dollars worth of that. This has meant that there's a much bigger staff than there used to be. There are at least 11 staff members in Geneva, and we have an office in New York City too, and there are at least 5 staff members there. A London office is also in the works. The Geneva office manages the bulk of the budget, about 5.5 million Swiss francs, and the UN office 1.5 million. So where does this funding come from? And only a little bit of it comes from our dues. It mostly comes from grants, and the bulk of grants that WILPF International gets comes from governments who do some social justice related international work, that is not the US. Largely it is Sweden, Norway, Canada, the UK, Netherlands, and Switzerland. If you should want the most recent figures about who provides how much money, I can give you those during the Q&A or send them to you. WILPF also has a several-year history of getting relatively big grants from the Oak Foundation. Okay, now I'm going to talk about sections. So the US is a section, Costa Rica is a section. How many sections are there? There are about 35 sections, and there are also groups which are smaller than sections, but must have 10 members. Now, the WILPF website is really deceptive here. It lists 50 sections, but if you click on each of the countries that it lists as having a section, you'll see that some of these have been suspended for lack of activity, and you will see that some of them are groups. Okay, what is WILPF's program for the current period, 2018 to, it was meant to be 2021, but now it extends to 2022. And incidentally, Maria Butler is director of global programs for WILPF. Some of you will know Maria from when she worked out of the New York City office at Peace Women. The four major concentrations for this period have been human rights, disarmament, women, peace and security, and crisis response. There is one current project the Secretariat is funding that is relatively new. It's called Confronting Militarized Masculinities. It has locations in Cameroon, Colombia, Afghanistan, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The director of this project is a man from South Africa who is currently working at UC San Diego. And his first name is Dean, and I'm not sure of his last name. Okay, and I could not find information. The International WILPF website leaves a lot to be desired. I could not get information about that project from that website. I had to type in to Google confronting militarized masculinities to get details and an interview with this man. So what does the IB do? In between congresses, the International Board of Directors meets monthly or bi-monthly, and sometimes less. We work on policy for the organization. We review finances, we make reports, we hear reports from the Secretary General, Madeline Reese, and from our president, Joy Onyeso. We hear committee reports, and we write and vote on policy proposals regarding governance and regarding some WILPF actions. For instance, whether and what positions or advocacy statements should WILPF send out on specific issues, such as last week, the position on the situation in Afghanistan. Now, according to the communications policy, which Beatriz and I had a hand in writing, those statements are not supposed to go out without having been run through the international board, but in this instance, that didn't happen. Many international board members, you heard about what we do. Many international board members thought we would be talking about international issues and regional issues rather than working on policy. And we would love to spend more time discussing contemporary issues of peace and social and economic justice, and both internationally and in our regions, and hearing our members' strategies to approach these issues. But international board meetings do not allow time for these discussions. We have begun then to hold some extra meetings to discuss these things. Okay. And we're talking about Constitution partly because the Congress is coming up next year, the International Congress. And it is Congress that makes policy. So if you want any changes to be made to the Constitution or the bylaws, they have to go through Congress. And as Beatriz pointed out, there's a deadline. And in general, the deadline is everything has to be in place if you want it to go to Congress 6 months before Congress. Now, this is a new policy that went into effect with the Constitution that came into effect in 2018. Previously, you could introduce resolutions, plans for WILPF's international work, et cetera, at Congress, but you can no longer do that. And so one of the questions that I want to raise is, do you want that to continue the same way? It's it makes it difficult to work on things that are really, issues that are really crucial and in the moment. Another major change that happened in 2018 is the number of representatives on the International Board went from 1 for every national section to 1 for every region. And someone divided up the world into 6 regions. And the region that we are in is, got to be ready for this, the Americas. And there you can hear colonialist thinking, it seems to me, in that division. Nonetheless, Beatriz and I have found it easy to work together. That wouldn't necessarily always be the case. And it seems to me we want to look at things like how does the world get divided up by WILPF? So every region has a representative and an alternate. Beatriz is the representative, I'm the alternate. Plus we have a president, 2 vice presidents, and a treasurer. That's the International Board. Okay. So as Beatriz was saying, the sooner the better. We are working with consultants who hope to have some plans in place by December. And that means that we, the US section, since that's mostly who is here, need to get our plans developed before then, okay? Okay, I'm gonna stop and turn it back over to Beatriz.
Okay, good. Just to mention, I think that the gentleman of the masculinities, his name is Peacock. Then
Thank you. I thought it might be, but I thought
yeah,
I made it up.
Something like that, yes. So I would like to speak a little bit about the standing committee, where I'm currently in, and say that it is this time being chaired by Carmen Megajon from the Spanish section. As soon as the IB approves the timeline, the standing committee will send out a letter to all the sections and will then start looking for the amendments, to receive amendments. And of course, we need the time to work on it, on the amendments that come in. And then we have to present the draft proposal to the IB. The new draft will then be sent to the sections, and the deadline will be communicated in order that the last comments can come in. Now it is clear, as it happened last time with the last Congress, not all the wishes go easily through. Our wishes go easily through. So to have time to discuss it may eventually help. It is at the triennial Congress that the amendments to the Constitution and bylaws will be approved. But like I think Janet already said, at that point, no discussion will be permitted. That is why all the amendments and comments need to be sent in before the Congress, and hopefully, like I said before December, so that there is a possibility to still go back and forth with certain issues. Again, the next Congress will be between 16 and 17. That was said last time. Now, concerning regional meetings that are taking place, which is supposed to be a process of reflecting, proposing amendments, additional suggestions now for the international program, that already begun. The secretariat, like we said before, has hired 2 consultants that work on developing a strategy for the program 2022-2025. and also on organizational development. But when it comes to organizational developments, there we have to be very careful because it's only the IB who can approve such changes. The organization of the consultant is called Strategic Circle. And my impression is that the organization who funded them and these ladies themselves, they would like really to have a participatory and bottom-up process. Now, since they have to work with other members of the IB and the secretariat, I don't know exactly if this is going well. They are taking on topics as vision and values, leadership and succession, how to develop the next generation of leaders, making spaces for connection for WILPFers, building trust and increasing inclusivity. They have been involved with us for a few months and have a timeline that intends to emerge with the program by December. They are calling for wide participation, like I said before, and I will share then the documents from, I don't know if we already sent it, but maybe we have to. I think Mignon Kaiser, which is one of the ladies, and Yerusha Rangasamy, if they didn't send it out, they will send it out.
I have the documents, you probably do too. And I think they were sent to Darian, but I'll send them to anybody who wants them.
Yeah. At the same time, I think, well, when we look at the program, for example, I think we as Americas, we need to look at things which lack in the program and that concern us.
Yeah.
And a situation like, for example, the ramping militarization, which is going on in our region, and WILPF has so far not touched upon that issue. So for me, at least with our section, we will bring the issue of the militarization in our region forward. At the same time, there is a coordination committee that was set up to prepare together with the consultant this participatory process. We don't know exactly now who is part of that coordination committee. Most probably, and then, well, most probably there will be one or two IB members of the secretariat, and some other people they called on from different sections. In addition, it's important that you know that most probably another consultant will be hired to work on the conference coordinations. Since very honestly, it is not yet clear to me how all this will play out as we move towards the triennial Congress. I think we have to be very, very careful, look at all the messages we get and all that, and then find a way that we can continue work together as a region. Thank you.
So I'm going to wrap up our presentation and then we'll do questions and answers by asking you to engage with the following topics and questions. This will be at least the third time you've heard this from us. You should try to get involved in planning for the next Congress in 2022 and do that soon. So here are some questions. What do you think should be included in International WILPF's program from 2022 to 2025? What changes to the Constitution and bylaws would you like to see? Are you interested in being involved in international WILPF governance? And what are your ideas for making the work of international more evident, more well-known. While we are committed, Beatriz and I, and our longtime members, because we have discussed this now for 3 years, have concerns about the functioning of the secretariat and relationships between the secretariat and the international board, particularly having to do with maintaining democratic and participatory organization. We're happy to answer any questions you have. Okay. Okay, the first question. Okay, months ago, I registered for a MyWILF account. I wasn't really expecting an email with a link to complete the registration process. No surprise, I have not seen such an email. Has anyone in the US section not in the international leadership ever succeeded in signing up for MyWILF? Yeah, I signed up a few years ago. I don't know what it's like to sign up now. Then it was easy. Yes, there was a return email. You had to confirm that you were who you were. But if that's something you should take to the secretariat and say, hey, or I can take as your representative to the secretariat. Hey, we've got members who are unable to get a MyWILF account. And you need to know too that the MyWILF part of the WILF International, it's just called wilf.org, the WILF website. MyWILF doesn't really contain policy things. It's more about how can we get people to work together. And as Beatriz pointed out, you really have to search for documents. So, and the website is relatively new, a few months old. So it used to be relatively easy to find things like the treasurer's reports and the minutes from the international board meetings. I tried a few days ago and I could not find those things. So there are some problems with the website. And you can always let me know if you continue to have problems signing up for MyWILF account. Okay. Okay, Barbara Nielsen has a question about what working groups are in existence now. What about the environmental working group? The environmental working group has just been revived just in the last couple of months. And Nancy Price is working on that, Barbara. So she can tell you what's going on there. Okay. Is Laura Roscoe still on the IB? Okay, you have to understand, and this is something Beatriz and I, we estimated with our third colleague that we had spent something like 750 hours on this, no joke. So there's the international board, and then the UN office in New York, which was incorporated as a separate nonprofit corporation, but needs to be combined with WILF. It has its own board, and Laura Roscoe is on that board. Is WILF influenced by grantors? Well, yes, of course. I think it's fair to say that some of the projects WILF decides to do are decided because there is grant money to do those kinds of projects. Okay, so if the government of Sweden, it's SIDA, the Swedish International Development Association, wants to fund certain kinds of projects, then I think WILF steps up and says, oh, we can do that. Okay, what is happening with the UNO? Oh man, that is a long story. And it's not very pretty, and it's for some other time, I think. Consultants are working on helping us develop WILF in ways that we and they think it ought to be developed. And Beatriz talked about that somewhat. And do we need to rewrite our vision and mission statements. How do we recruit young members? That's a huge thing. You know, how do we expand? Those are those particular consultants. We have in the past had other consultants too, but these are the ones, these two women from an organization called the Strategy Circle out of South Africa are the people who are working with us on organizational development and on planning for what the 2022 to 2025 program will be. Wow. Concerns about relations between the Secretariat and National Board. What do you want to say something there, Beatriz?
Well, I think the problem is that there are people that forget about that we have a constitution and that the constitution needs to be followed. And I understand that when there are emergencies, maybe you have to do things quickly. And you cannot always call on the IB for everything. Besides that, we don't meet very often. But I think that has caused some problems. Because definitely I'm on other boards also. And if you are not completely aware about the financial situation of an organization, you may be held responsible for anything which slipped away. Now that we are going into this new process of deliberating on the international program, what concerns me in particular is that since they have set up sort of a coordination group, that decisions will be taken maybe at that level in order to decide what do we take from what the members have said and what not. And that should actually be something that has to be discussed at the level of the IB. So there are different things, and not always we can say that everything is wrong. Everything is wrong, but we sure sometimes have our concerns, yes.
Okay. Mary Hanson Harrison asks, since representation has downsized undemocratically, do you think that smaller representation works better? Not having been on the board previously, I don't know how it worked previously, but we have heard that when each section had a representative, it was very difficult, for example, to get a quorum because there were 30 some sections, and not always would more than half of the sections show up at the meetings. And that it was a little more chaotic. We have been trying, Beatriz and I, to be in contact with our sections enough to know what our sections want us to present to the board. But it's, you know, not having seen the previous iteration, I can't say. I don't know. What do you think, Beatriz?
Our section was one of the sections which sort of didn't want to have the change. But now, since you and me, we had a good working relationship, which you rightly say may not always be the case. It worked quite well. It is now up to the sections to say. I remember that in the past, we were never contacted by anyone. But now these days, we try to, at least from time to time, to contact the sections, talk with them individually or as a group and so on. So we try to keep abreast of how things are going on. I know that there are other regions where they also work well as a team. There are other regions where not so much. Yeah. But well, that's how it is. I see here what John Goddard says about the sections, that Africa has more and more sections. The issue here is funding. The issue here is funding. And the funders, they sort of decide what they want to fund. And those funding agencies, they're very keen on Africa. They're very keen on Middle East in some ways, but they are absolutely not interested in the Americas. And Europe, of course, they have the means in order to function themselves, the sections, and also the regional representative of Europe is very, very active, and she has the means to move around herself. She doesn't really need that a donor funds them. You know? This is not the case for us, and Africa is definitively what is in the interest, and in the interest, I don't know if good or bad, of the donors.
Lenny Villa Gomez Reeves asks, does the secretariat entirely control the money? Well, yes. And is it the rainmaker financially? Absolutely. Yeah. The grant proposals are written out of Geneva. I don't think that they're written out of the office in New York, but I have recently been appointed to be on the UNO board in New York. That just happened a couple of weeks ago. And that board hasn't met. You know, they only meet twice a year at present. I'm going to try to change that. So I don't have all the information. And I will say that transparency is an issue. It is an issue. And I and Beatriz and several other people have asked questions, like, for example, so you get a grant from, let's say, the Norwegian aid agency, and then, of course, you get a grant, you have to write a report back to the grantor. And I asked, couldn't the IB get copies of those reports that go back to the granting agencies? And I was told, no, that would be too much work for the staff. But it seemed to me it could just be an email click. But financially, it's hard to get specific information sometimes too. Like, it was very difficult to learn who holds which positions in some of the offices, right? It would say, you know, here's this position and here's the salary, but we couldn't, and we were told, oh, well, we can't share that information with you. But I've never been on a board where you didn't know who the employees were. So I find, you know, this is a point of conflict to try to get more information. And mostly, you know, this is the kind of information that boards normally have.
Here, some about the majority votes. Sometimes we have to vote. Yeah, there are issues where we have to vote, and usually it's when we had not very pleasant discussions about something. But the majority of issues is voted by consensus. Yeah.
Another thing to say about votes is that every region has one vote on the IB. So Beatriz has a vote, and if we're both present, I don't. Okay.
Okay, so Jane Dole says, why are consultants proposing program content and not the sections? Very good question. That's why I was trying to be persuasive with my presentation about the importance of the sections. I mean, sections and their elected members who go to Congress are the Congress, you know, and so it's very important.
Cheryl Spencer has your hand raised.
I submitted a question quite a few questions ago, and you may have missed it. I shall be in Geneva on the 1st and 2nd of September. And essentially, because I'm going to Switzerland on Monday. And it was my intention to drop into the Geneva office and say hello in a friendly way. It's right near the train station. It's very close to where I shall be staying for 2 days. What would you like me to convey to any of the staff that I managed to bump into? Is there something you'd like me to say or convey?
Say hi.
Pardon?
Say hi.
Yeah,
the people we especially work with are Elena Kaysen and Jenny Owlin. Yeah, we have the most contact really on the IB. Those are the people we have the most contact with.
I mean, I hear you have some concerns, let's say, but maybe it's not their say so, right?
I don't think, no, it's not. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I just trying to be friendly.
I think you should go in really friendly, because the girls who work, they staff, you know, they staff and they try to service us, they try to service the secretariat, and they follow orders, you know. Yeah. So, but it's good to go. It's good to go if whoever has the chance to go and from time to time pop in. It's very good, you know. Now I see Joan Goddard who is asking about Canada. Canada has only the main branch and one additional branch.
Beatriz, any wrapping up work?
Well, I just would like to urge you to get, of course, not everyone can do everything, but hopefully you can amongst you decide who can probably follow this issue or the other issue, constitution or international program or whatever, in order that you are on top of it, no?
Another thing to say about the next International Congress is, you know, at least at the last Congress, there were programs that were done by WILPF members. And we haven't been told yet if that will also be the case on this. It's going to be online. So, you know, and it's based on Australia time with, I'm sure, some concessions to Geneva time. But we don't yet know what hours, you know, programming is going to be concentrated in. So you maybe find yourself, as for me, a lot of the IB meetings are at 5 a.m. So that's going to be an issue. I'm just going to say that's going to be an issue, and it all has to be worked out.
I think about the resolution which Barbara is asking. Right now, mostly it is being talked about the Constitution and the international program. But I think since we are less than a year away from the Congress, any idea of resolution should be the drafting should be start now also.
Just to say, you know, to wrap up on my end, I'm available via email, you know, email me any questions or suggestions or whatever. I can always get with Beatriz.
I just see Margot Schulthess. She says, why don't we call the Americas Turtle Island? I would like that, but instead of Americas. And then here it is mentioned about who appointed Janet to the UNO board. I think it's important to evacuate this question because we were 4 working practically all this amount of numbers there on trying to solve past mistakes in the setup of the UNO office. We have come to the point where WILPF is now being considered the sole member of the UNO board, because even if it's an office, it has to be registered in the UN in the New York state. And then during the last meeting, we had a slate of people that could be participating. The issue is that we wanted to have, there is a possibility to have 7 members in the UN office board of directors. Since there are 3 directors there who have been not so easy to accept changes, we tried to have a slate of 4 people to accept changes. It didn't go through in the IB. There was a voting in that, and that is how Janet and a lady which is in the finance committee from Belgium, Rosian, they were elected to become the new members of the UNO board. Now this is for a temporary, temporary until the next Congress, because
1 year.
Because supposedly when the next IB is elected, then this IB will have to decide who will be the new members of the UNO board. What we had for now is that some people were still constantly renewing themselves on the board. Some, not all. Huh? And then the issue, but the issue now is that we still have 3 members in the UNO board that are the ones who didn't make it easy for us, let's say, to make the changes. And now are 2 who are coming in. And I don't know, I hope that they will have the strength and the capacity and to pull the changes through which need to be made in order that everything is all in order. There is 3-2 now, 3-2. So we will see how this develops. Yeah.
So we got down into the weeds a little bit about how all of this works. I hope it hasn't been too trying for you.
It has.
Not too boring also.
This has been very informative. We are about 4 minutes over time, so
Okay.
we want to welcome people to the next program and thank you both for this very informative and in-depth program.